Sean, Dad had some great traits. List another one for us that comes to mind.
One that comes to mind for me is Dad was very thorough. He had a thoroughness about him. And I remember I was a young leader in a church calling that was pretty heavy. And I remember just calling him and talking to him about some of the difficult situations I was facing. And I just remember he would say, you have to do your due diligence. You have to investigate. You have to see both sides. And sometimes it was like a couple, or it was, one side against the other. And he was very, adamant about you have to do your due diligence. You have to being fair, hearing both sides. Everybody has a side. And he was just very thorough like that, because he knew like pieces of information could be critical in forming a judgment and in a decision. So I just think that was one of his great traits, is being thorough, having a thoroughness that I try to emulate as well.
He wasn't a shortcut person.
Right. Sometimes you would actually go a little bit
To
long.
a fault.
Yeah,
Thorough to a fault.
And the thoroughness, there was a little bit of a slowness at times.
Yeah.
Kind of a methodical. So it was a little bit slower on
Right.
getting somewhere, or
Right.
even getting dressed, but it was
Right.
always very thorough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lynn, what's a trait that comes to mind for Dad?
I think Dad was a long-term optimist. And I think that bore out kind of, and it ties in with the idea of faith. I remember just many times when it wasn't, Mom was the one who was like, it's gonna work out now, but Dad was ultimately, it's gonna be okay in
In
the
the long
eternal,
run, yeah.
in the eternal perspective. And they fit each other. She didn't quite have that on the horizon, is it going to be okay? But he did. But she had the, like we talked, it's going to be okay now. It's going to be okay. And so they fit each other well with that. And that, I think when we realized that, it was hopeful, because there were many a time when the world was going to end. And we watched him carry that
Angst over-
load.
Yeah.
Angst over stuff.
Carrying that-
After the nuclear war.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 And Mom would say there's not going to be a nuclear war.
Yeah. She would reassure. Yeah. And that
They
was-
did fit each other well with that.
Yeah. I appreciated that.
And he would recognize it might be hard now, and it might even get worse, but it's gonna end up okay.
That's right. Aaron, what comes to mind?
He loved breakfast. He loved breakfast foods. He loved a big Saturday morning breakfast. And I do remember that when y'all were still at home, we had that. Like, you loved to have Mom's eggs, and he loved flapjacks, and just, some fried potatoes, and the ketchup on his eggs. I just remember.
Ketchup on everything.
Yeah.
You need
But I-
enormous
Pancakes.
enormous amount of
Well, it was a
ketchup.
stack.
Yeah.
Ketchup, egg, bacon,
Yeah.
or pancake, and then he'd
He
stack
was
it
a little bit
again.
ahead of his time, because now you have the waffle, salty
Yeah.
sweet. He would do
Yeah.
the salty sweet.
He would.
Yes.
Yeah, he would.
Yes. But I think it was more than anything, that was a time he could de-stress.
Yeah.
Big hard work week, and then Saturday morning was kind of his time to kind of just recenter, and a big breakfast was fun to him, and I remember that being a relaxed fun time in our home.
Yeah, I think it also is his upbringing.
Yeah.
That was a good, like the
Big
hearty
farm
breakfast
breakfast, yeah.
was a part of like being healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
True. Yep.
Well, as I've been thinking about it, he was a dreamer, and he had big dreams, and he for someone who was brutally realistic in a lot of ways, he had dreams, and he liked to invent things. He would come up with inventions. He was a little bit ahead of his time there. Do you remember the VAH, the
I
VAH?
remember the VA, and he would draw it on an index card.
Yep.
I think we may still have some drawings.
Yeah.
He'd write plays.
So the VAH stood for Video Audio Headset.
Headset.
Oh.
where you
This
could
was like
see
in the
and hear.
70s.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
70s, early
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah,
I'd
maybe
say
it's
probably
80s.
early
Wow.
80s. Yeah.
And lo and behold,
and then it hits.
And then
somebody
virtual
invented
reality.
it.
Yeah, he talked about it, and it would be called
He did.
VAH, VAH. He also wrote lots of musicals, and when I was teaching music, he wanted me to have my students perform his one of his musicals called Santa and Sons, and we never were able to because he didn't know how to write music, so it was just like songs recorded into a little tape recorder, and then I would have to plunk it out on the piano, and it just never came to fruition. But he always had big dreams, and he was creative, had a very creative mind.
On the songwriting, so 5th grade, we were supposed to write a song.
Yeah.
I agree. And he was like, I've got the song for you. This was 5th grade. I was in 5th grade.
Were you
What's
here
that,
or in
11?
Buffalo?
We were in Houston. And the name of the song was Way Back When. And it was, I wish we were doing the things we were doing way back when. We were 11. How far back were we really
Can't
looking
go,
at,
huh?
you know? 10, maybe 9. It was such an adult song. And he wanted us to sing that song. And I think Mom was like, no. And she wrote something very simple that was a winner.
Chub.
So he did have
Oh,
a
yeah.
dreaming side. The trait I have selected for Dad is physical strength. As I've said, there's a little bit 2 families going on. Me, Lynn, Deb, a little break, Aaron, Steve, and Sean. And we had him as a younger, very physical, dad. So I remember some physicality, not with us. He was never mean to me or never struck me, but he was strong and it was a little bit intimidating. So a couple of things I do remember. I had surgery when I was 8, and I remember him holding me. He had like a turtleneck sweater on and just walked the halls, just like you guys have described how he would hold. But I was 8. I mean, I was a small kid, but I was still 8 years old. I wasn't a baby. And I remember how strong he felt. And it was so reassuring.
Yeah.
I remember in Dallas, I was a little younger, probably 5 or 6. And we had some next door neighbors, and the kids were punky. The boys were punky. There was about a 13 or 14-year-old kid. And I think he lit something on fire on our driveway. And I remember watching this. Dad walked over to him and picked him up and walked him across his yard and deposited him on their front porch. The kid was probably 150 pounds, and he just walked that kid over, and boom, it was just a display of physicality, which he had, and the way he'd hit a tennis ball or a baseball, it was just, just combustion, just really popped any kind of ball he hit.
Do you think that came from growing up on a farm? And
I didn't came from
Those
growing
kind of-
up on a farm. And so I've got this hanging in my workout room.
oh yeah,
That's a shot of Dad. I would say so. Heart Mountain, he grew up there, Heart Mountain, in the former Japanese barracks on
Yeah.
the farm, and
Internment
worked
camps,
it.
Yeah.
He was a super hard worker as a young man. And unfortunately got asthma, and I remember Grandpa saying he cost me the best. Asthma cost me the best worker on Heart Mountain, and that's how hard Dad was as a worker. But that's a big old rattlesnake on his shovel,
Here.
and he's probably 13, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I don't know, as young as maybe as young as 12 and as old as 14 or 15, but 13 years old, physical guy, physical strength, physical toughness from kind of the old cowboy model. And that's one of the traits I remember from Dad.
Courage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Killing a rattlesnake.
Yeah.
And smiling about it.
Yeah. Victory.